Get in, chop.
I'm a bit self-aware, sometimes it's fucked up, but life is gonna lie, so I ain't gonna slow up. I'm on a mission to change the face of mental health, kicking knowledge to my people, cause you know that health is wealth. It's your lucky day, cause you tuned into the greatest. Out here striving to survive, sometimes we fake it till we make it. If your mental health is slipping, then please don't touch that dial, go and grab. Yo, what's up, you guys? It's your girl, Trudy LPC, and thank you for tuning into this week's episode of the Self-Aware and Up podcast. Guys, I have definitely enjoyed this season so far. We have had so many amazing guests come to share their story, and I'm really interested in talking to today's guest. His history is something that I was really drawn to, and I'm really interested in just learning more about his story. His name is Jamie Hughes, and he's a social psychologist as well as an author, and he also does trauma recovery coaching as well as he does speaking engagements. So I'm going to let him dive into more about what he does and why he does what he does. But without further ado, please welcome to the Self-Aware and Up podcast, Jamie Hughes. Hey, Jamie, how's it going?
Hey, it's going great. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you here. Your story, when you initially reached out, your story is just really engaging. I love being able to kind of hear about people's personal journeys, because as professionals, sometimes we can get caught up in presenting a certain way and trying to sound good, but that we sometimes forget the human side of our journey. And so I want us to go ahead and get started by having you tell the audience just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So, as you mentioned, I'm a social psychologist, author, trauma recovery coach. So I've been working on my personal healing and journey, since probably like my mid-20s. Mm-hmm. And so I've had a lot of good personal experience dealing with trauma, childhood trauma and abuse. Grew up with depression. And so my background really does come from that, is from a personal journey. And as I got into studying psychology, I just fell in love with it and immediately wanted to start sharing what I learned from my own growth and journey, as well as what I learned educationally. And went into nonprofit field, helping field for many years. Worked in children's hospitals, worked in domestic violence and sexual assault agencies. So I've got a pretty good background that I use to continue my growth and to help others.
Gotcha. Yeah, I love the continuing our growth part, because I feel like sometimes people can think that they've arrived, they've self-actualized, and they're not actually there. So I love that you kind of acknowledge that part of your journey. Now, the social piece of it, that part I was definitely curious about. I love my sociology classes in undergrad. But what led you towards that part of psychology field?
Oh, wow. So I guess, like when I first started studying psychology, working on my bachelor's degree, I kind of like the saying goes, anybody in psychology goes into it to figure themselves out. That's definitely where I started. And the more I learned about individual psychology, I started just picking up pieces, especially I think when I worked in the domestic violence field, I kind of started focusing a little bit more on the social aspect. So kind of a little bit of a transition from just the individual psychology to, okay, now how does her or his psychology affect mine, or affect the community, and affect what we've done historically, what we're doing now, what's working, what's not working. And so it kind of just was a natural progression to just wanting to learn more and understand more about how the pieces work together, and hopefully, work in some areas to make improvements in society, in culture and communities, psychologically.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Okay, good. That part just intrigued me a little bit because I absolutely love social psychology. And I think even as a therapist, I'm always looking at all of the different components of like how the family dynamics impact. Probably should have went into marriage and family therapy instead of just clinical mental health. But I'm also intrigued with things like psychosis and, bipolar disorder and other more severe mental health disorders. So but I do see that there's some similarities in our histories in terms of working with kids and working with victims of domestic violence, which is tough work to do. So definitely want to give you kudos for that, because that's really difficult. It was difficult, very difficult for me to do that type of work when I did have those type of cases. So, but yeah, you've been around the block. You've done a lot in terms of that. I'm curious to know a little bit more about how your personal trauma impacted your desire to become a social psychologist.
Yeah. So when I was a young child, my mom was a single mom for many years. And then when I was 8 years old, one Saturday morning, sitting in my bedroom watching cartoons, my grandmother came back from the hospital and informed me that my mother had passed away. And so the trauma of that as a child just, put a halt on the growth of my soul, as I like to think of it. And shortly after that, I was sent to live with my dad, whom I had never even met or seen.
Wow.
And so I was thrust into an entirely new world, new family, new city, new school, everything. And I never got the chance to grieve properly. My father was psychologically and emotionally abusive as I was growing up. I would constantly get the message that I was not wanted. I was not part of that family, that I would never be anything. All those types of things that you typically hear. That's what I grew up with. And so that led to a very, very long, sometimes it feels like a lifelong struggle with depression. And my very first encounter or introduction to mental health was when I was 18 and I had a suicide attempt. So all of that led me, eventually to a point where I had to get better. I had to make a choice to get help. It was either that or die. And as I began to get help, I began to be more curious about, okay, I see now that it's not just me. I'm not just a worthless, bad kid. These are things that have happened to me that have affected my emotions, my thoughts, my behaviors, and I wanted to learn more. And that's how I got into psychology. That's what started me to want to actually go to school and learn about it, was to figure out not just really, how to heal myself, I guess, but I just had a innate curiosity of why. Why did this happen? Why does it have this effect? And, what more could come from it?
Yeah. Wow. You got me over here about to cry. Because we have very similar stories in terms of some of the narrative. And, I can't imagine what it must have been like losing your mom at such a young age and then being thrust into a situation where you're dealing with emotional abuse. Because people don't always think about how heavily the emotional abuse impacts us. They say the body keeps the score, our minds keep the score. And as you were talking, so much for me came up about my childhood and the idea, especially around the context of being bad versus I'm working through this with my therapist right now, being bad versus being broken. You were broken, not bad, but you were told you were bad. And so those things stick with you.
Yeah, I heard, like, and my dad's side of the family, they would often kind of protect him. Like if I said anything about, being mistreated or something that he had said to me or done to me, they would immediately be, oh, you're just acting out. You're the black sheep of the family. You're just a bad kid, and yeah, as I grew up and learned that, wait a minute, that wasn't the case. First of all, it was gaslighting. And second of all, you're talking about an 8-year-old child who was told he was going to be punished for grieving, for crying that his mother died.
Wow.
I mean, what do you expect from a child that, is threatened to suppress his emotions? Those things are going to come out. Especially as you grow into being a teenager, hitting peer pressure, identity crisis, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that stuff's coming out somewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really hard to hear that, people would support and defend the person that was emotionally abusing you as a child, instead of saying, okay, whoa, let's put the brakes on. What's going on here? What's been said? How's that, why are you feeling this way? So that support it wasn't there. Thankfully I had, some good friends at school that I met. I had my grandparents, my mother's parents, that were always loving and supportive.
Okay.
I didn't get to see them as much as I wanted to, but when I did, I knew that was my stable point. I knew that was my connection. So I had some positive aspects and some positive relationships that genuinely helped me growing up.
Yeah. And absolutely, we need those positive connections. I think that, so many people go through trauma during their childhood, and they don't always name it as that. I've worked with clients and as we're talking about it, and they were like, what do you mean trauma? And I was like, the things that you went through, that is trauma. That is what it looks like. And that is how it's showing up. From your perspective, what role do you think like anxiety plays in our trauma?
In terms of coming directly from the trauma?
Yeah.
So, there's so many studies, and like you mentioned just a second ago, the body keeps the score. That's, one of the modern foundations of where we're at in terms of the principle that stress and trauma is not just a mental thing. It's not just having a bad memory. Your body's nervous system actually reacts, which that's what we're designed to do. If you're threatened, your body's made to kick in hormones and neurotransmitters to deal with that threat, fight, flight, or freeze. That's where that comes from. But when you have trauma, especially as a child, it's during a time where your nervous system is still in development. And so those hormones and neurotransmitters and things that kick in from reacting to trauma can get stuck. And so you grow up, now your body itself and your mind, your subconscious, carry with it. They're still in preparation. They're still looking to avoid that danger, mentally, physically, even into adulthood. So now your body's having a reaction, and this anxiety can just come from that. And it ends up being something that your body's just stuck in. And so you're having these reactions and these feelings, and anxiety is one of those that's actually, I guess, probably easier to understand, because it's very much that, that uneasiness in your body before you can even think about it.
Right.
So you're having these reactions that doesn't match the situation, doesn't match the circumstances. And that's because it goes back to that trauma. Your mind and your body are still reacting from a point of that traumatic experience or experiences, depending on how long it went. And it will put you in that state of anxiety quicker than anything.
Yeah. I can definitely relate to that part of the childhood trauma piece. And I think a lot of times we don't recognize that some of those things are connected. I think that there's a big disconnect between us. Like, we can name certain things, but we can't connect the two. For me, for a long time, I thought I had got through a lot of the traumatic situations that I had gone through, and I thought I had healed and got to a place, and then all of a sudden I can't sleep, and all of these things are still coming back and flooding back to me. What are some of I guess the longer term things that you see in terms of how childhood trauma impacts most adults? Like, what are some of the key indicators that people should maybe pay attention to if they're experiencing these things?
Sure. So on top of mental illness that can come directly from trauma, and it's interesting, we're at a point in science and psychology where there's evidence both for a genetic component and an experiential or an environmental component. In other words, there's proven, studies proven that things can be passed along genetically, but also at the same time, trauma, childhood trauma especially, can kick those things in or can directly cause things like anxiety, depression, PTSD. And long term, it's not just the mental illness. You can have cognitive issues. So sometimes people, especially in ADHD, people think, okay, well, I'm just scatterbrained and, I can't focus, or maybe I'm hyper-focused. That can be directly tied to trauma, that has caused your, the cognitive part of your mind to dysregulate. And on top of the mental illness, cognitive issues, definitely social issues. So almost every, relationship problem can somehow be tied back to a previous traumatic experience, especially childhood trauma. The whole attachment theory, it comes from childhood trauma. And this is something people don't connect sometimes. It's like, well, I've been in 4 or 5 what I thought was serious relationships, and they always start the same. They always end the same, but I can't figure it out because it's different people. And, I'm just me. But if you go back, that attachment style might be anxious or it might be avoidant.
Yes.
Which both directly come from a form of childhood trauma.
Yeah.
Thus the attachment thing. And then you got the physical component. There was an awesome study done in the 1990s. It was called the ACE study, Adverse Childhood Experiences. And this was a study done with over 17,000 people in California that were had physical illnesses. And they did this study and said, okay, here's these 10 types of childhood trauma. Just check yes or no if you experienced any of them. And so all these people did these surveys, yes, no, yes, no. If it was a yes, it was a point. So basically you ended up with a score, 0 to 10. And what they found was that around 40% of the participants had at least 1 or 2 of these childhood traumas. And these were all people that had some kind of physical illness already. Well, this study basically showed that almost any adult disease that you can name had more chances, had a greater risk because of childhood trauma. Everything from diabetes to cancer, obesity, heart disease, all of these things. If there was that ACE score, anywhere around 4 or greater, it's over 50% higher risk of every single physical disease there is. And if the ACE score was a 6 or more, 20 years less life expectancy.
Wow.
Think about that. 20 years less life expectancy if a person had experienced 6 out of the 10 childhood traumas. and there's a lot of people that have. It's like studies since then have been, recreated this study and also looked at other social issues, but it's an estimate that it's around 25%. It's around a fourth of the population in the U.S. that's had 4 or more of these childhood traumas. So yeah, a lot of long-term effects that sometimes we don't think about.
Yeah, I'm sitting here thinking about all of those because I don't know what my score would be, but I imagine it would be pretty damn high. And fortunately, I'm in my 40s now. I haven't been diagnosed with anything other than the mental health side of it. So I'm praying no physical stuff comes. But yeah, it's just interesting to kind of hear how all of those things are connected. Just because we don't really think about that. We just think about, I have hypertension. It just runs in my family. But we're not thinking about the trauma that runs in our family with that hypertension,
Yeah. And if you think about, okay, let's think about a time in my life where I was just extremely stressed or maybe extremely worried. Like, even if you got a job interview coming up, you can get worried about it. Or people like, public speaking, people are afraid of public speaking. So if you have something coming up, you get worried about it. Well, how does that affect you? Oh man, you can break into sweats. It definitely will mess up your stomach. People be running to the bathroom 2 or 3 times because they're worried about something.
Yes.
That's what stress does. Now bump it up a few notches to where it's chronic, where it happens over and over again, or it's extremely traumatic, like it's a severe event. So it doesn't just affect your body in that moment. Like I said earlier, your body can get stuck to where all those systems in your body that are operating during that time of stress it changes. It changes your body to where it can affect those systems for decades.
Wow.
And so, of course, that's going to lead to some kind of, chronic illness, some type of health issues, because your body's just not working correctly.
Yeah. So how do you suggest people deal with things like if they are experiencing anxiety related to childhood trauma? Like what steps could they take to kind of start to navigate through that?
Oh, sure. First thing, always, think about going to therapy. You've got to at least have a starting point. So you need someone that has an outside perspective, someone that, like you mentioned earlier, you have people that talk about, oh yeah, my family this or my childhood this. Okay, that's trauma. What? No, that's not trauma. What do you mean? So you've got to have a starting point, an outside perspective, someone that has the experience and the training to help you, even if it's just getting started down that path. You need that. Then you have to become a student of yourself. Really sit down and say, okay, here in all honesty is what has happened, what I've seen, what's been done. Here's where I am now. Here's what I see impacting my life, the different areas of it. So what can I do to work on this? What's my next step? Even if it's just one area of this, how can I work on it? So yeah, become a student of yourself, and you take back the power from these issues, from these mental illnesses, from these circumstances that have impacted you. You take back your power and say, okay, this is a thing that's in my life, but it's not all of me. I'm not all of that. I'm more than that, and I'm going to work on this in a way that's going to promote growth and healing. So you really have to just reach that point and say, okay, even though this is going to be difficult, I'm going to do it, and I can do it. I'm telling you from my perspective, my personal journey, you can do it. I've done it. Thousands of others have done it. And even if it's one step at a time, you can make progress.
Yeah. What was your personal journey like with that though? Like you kind of 8 years old, you're going through this as a kid, and 18, you have a suicide attempt. And then, you study. It was like, was studying it the biggest part of your journey, like going to school to learn about it? Or how else did you start to really heal those parts of yourself?
Yeah, I started therapy, which, and this is one of those things that we don't often talk about, publicly, but for most people, your first one or two attempts at therapy probably are not going to feel very successful. You might get some tidbits, and you might feel some relief. But it's like anything else in life. You kind of have to learn. You have to learn how to do it, what to expect, what your part in it is. So I started the therapy and kind of was like, okay, well, this is good. I'm getting some good advice, but I don't know that it's doing a lot. Then I started my education component, and really the longer I stuck with it, both the therapy and learning for myself, the more I realized it was helping me. It takes a while. If you're dealing with something that you've had for years and years and years, it's going to take a while to uncover that. It's going to take a while to get down to the roots of the problem and to start putting those pieces together. So, I had to learn that. I had to learn that, okay, this is a process. It's not just taking the pill and feeling better the next day. I have to undo, in a sense, all the things that were done. So my journey started like that. It started slow. It started unsure. It started wondering if I was ever going to be able to shake the depression, if I was ever going to be able to get out of that dark place. And just the more I went back, the more I stuck with it, slowly, the better it got. And I started learning other things that would be beneficial. Like I started learning how journaling helped. I started learning that diet had a huge impact. Exercise had a huge impact. Meditation. So slowly I started picking up these tools, trying them out, and just seeing what worked. And over time, the benefits were there. Just like growing a garden. Over time, I started seeing the plants grow. I started seeing the flowers blossom. I started seeing the fruits grow to a point where I could enjoy them. I could eat the fruits. But that came from the work that was put in. So, yeah, sometimes it's a slow and painful process, but it's worth it. I'm so, so grateful for where I am today compared to where I was 20 years ago.
Yeah. We've definitely come a long way from those beginnings, those rough stages, as it associates with childhood trauma. I'm kind of personally in the middle. I've been in therapy for years with the same therapist, and we've worked through a lot of stuff. And I was doing great with recovery until my dad passed away last year. And it triggered so many things in me from childhood, and so many things came back to the surface that I thought were worked through. And so I'm actually currently just started, not just started, but I started a couple of months ago, therapy, EMDR, to really dig into a lot of my trauma. And it's been an interesting journey thus far, really going back to some of those touchstone memories and really carving out digging out a lot of those things that I've suppressed and, that were deeply buried because I thought I had dealt with it, but still resurfaces. So I think it is important for us to know that, even when we do get through our journey and we feel like we've arrived, that life circumstances can still come in and trigger certain things for us. And you may have to revisit, and you may have to come up with another plan of action, because trauma lives deep within us.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I always try to help people understand by thinking of the stock market. If you pick a good company, not a failing one, but a good one, even the best companies, if you look at their stock market record, let's say over 5 years, it's not a straight line from 0 to 100. It's up, down, up, down, up, down, but with a slight growth upwards. And that is what mental health healing is really like. It is ups and downs, ups and downs, ups and downs. And when you have a life event and it triggers something in you, like you said, you're supposed to be affected by the death of your parents, by the death of a child, by the death of your best friend. You're supposed to be affected by a national crisis, by losing your job, by having a car wreck or a sickness. That's normal. But when when you've struggled for years and years and with anxiety or depression or PTSD, it feels like it hits harder and it feels like a setback. But you're normal. You're normal. You're having a normal experience, and that's okay. That's what it's supposed to be. That's what it's like for everybody else, even if you don't see it, even if they cover it up better or you think it's different. It's not. When you go through something tragic like that, it's supposed to hurt, and that's part of life, and that's okay. You go back and like you've done the right thing. You've gone back and you said, I see that this is touching on not just the grief of this loss, but it's bringing up some other stuff that maybe I haven't dealt with. So let's deal with that. Yeah. So that's the right thing to do. That's the healthy way to handle it.
Yeah. I had to fight a year to get there, but all of those signs, all of those things were showing back up, like things of how I would react in the past. All of those things, those indicators were coming up. I said, you got to do something different because this ain't working. Yeah. Gotcha. So, Jamie, I know you've gone through a lot. You've had a lot of experiences in terms of life and figuring yourself out, getting over and getting through different challenges. What would you say is one of the biggest lessons you've learned about just your journey, your life in general?
That I don't have to be perfect, that nobody's perfect, even when you think they are, and that even if it's a mental illness or trauma that you're trying to heal from, you're never going to be 100% perfect, and that's okay. You can absolutely learn to be happy with yourself and who you are, and take those experiences and turn them into benefits. Use them as life lessons. Let your barriers become your bridge. Use the things that you've been for to chart your path forward in growth and healing, and maybe go into a helping profession and helping others. And there's many, many, many ways to do that. But not necessarily, be an engineer, architect, a mechanic, doesn't matter. You can take those lessons and pass them on to your children. I mean, there's so many things in the world that I've learned to see because I've been in the darkness. I've lived in the darkness. I've hurt. I've cried. I've struggled. And I can see things in the world and in life that sometimes other people take for granted. And that's been the greatest lesson, I think, in, all of my journey, is just learning to appreciate myself.
Gotcha. Yeah. It can take time for some people to get to that place.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just because there's so much work that goes into it, reframing, reprocessing to do that, especially if you grew up hearing something different than that. So yeah, I definitely appreciate your honesty with that. I know we all go through things in life, and I appreciate your vulnerability with even sharing, because I know as helping professionals, sometimes it can be hard to open up those parts of ourselves. But I do want to shift gears a bit, and I want to know, how do you personally connect with the idea of being self-aware and fucked up?
Um, it's so funny. When I first saw the title of your show, I was like, yes, yes, this is what we don't hear enough of sometimes, especially coming from professionals. So people see like, oh, well, Jamie's a social psychologist and an author. And so he's got it all figured out. And no, it is a continuous learning journey. And especially when you become self-aware, the fucked up thing is you realize how much stuff there is and how you don't have it all figured out and how you will never have it all figured out. Life is a continuous journey. It's a continuous growth. And like I said earlier, like you were talking about, losing a loved one, those things are going to happen in life. So you're going to continuously have ups and downs. So when you become self-aware, you realize, oh, okay, there is no point to where it's all going to be figured out and it's all going to be just perfect, smooth sailing. And you're not going to reach this point where it's just a flat line of happiness and there's never anything else in life. So becoming self-aware can actually, at first, be a little bit of a downer, because then you're like, oh, well, wow, this is not what I thought it was going to be, or I'm not going to get to where I thought I'm going to reach that storybook ending and that movie, happiness where everything's just okay. But the next stage of that, once you kind of get through that little downer stage, you realize, oh, wow. So my purpose then is to learn and grow and share and enjoy the good parts of life. Yeah. So it's definitely an eye-opening experience, that when you realize that everything's not supposed to be perfect. But again, once you reach that, then you can kind of go into that next stage of, okay, now let me give, let me grow some more and just enjoy who I am and where I've come from.
Yeah. Gotcha. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, every time someone comes on, they're like, I really like the title. I really, enjoyed that, because it's like, it made me really evaluate myself. So it's always good to hear that feedback. Yeah. So I want to know, and I know you have a lot of book offerings, and you do speaking engagements, trauma recovery coaching, all of that. Can you tell the audience, how can they, learn more about the books that you have to offer and all of the services that you have, and how can they connect with you if they want to use your services or purchase any of your items?
Absolutely. My website is managingmentalhealth.net, and my social media is on there. Please like and follow. I pretty much every day share, some kind of insight on mental health, some kind of encouragement, practical tools, things like journaling prompts. And then also the same website, if you're interested in the trauma recovery and coaching, you can sign up for that there. If you just want to shoot me an email, personally, professionally, my email's on there. And then each of my books are also listed there, so you can see a short description. And they're all available on ebooks on all the major platforms. So it doesn't matter if you use Kindle, Nook, any Apple, any of those. You just click the link and pick which one you want to use. And those are available there too.
Can you speak more to the books that you have available?
Sure. So I started a series on managing mental health, and each one dives into a specific issue the 4 that I have available right now are adult ADHD, PTSD, clinical depression, and anxiety. In each book, I wanted it to be more than just information, more than just say, oh, here's what this thing is, where it comes from, yada, yada. They're made to be extremely practical. So there's enough information on each condition so that you have a better understanding of what you're dealing with, or maybe what your loved one is dealing with, someone in your family. And then they dive into very practical steps that you can almost use like a checklist and say, okay, I've got anxiety. I'm reading about this. Wow, I didn't know this and I didn't know that. I didn't know it. Maybe it came from trauma, those kind of things. And then boom, okay, let's look at your diet. Here's what's good, what will be beneficial. Here's the types of foods that you can eat that will help your gut microbiome, that will help your gut-brain connection. Here's exercise. Here's the types of things that will be beneficial in resetting your nervous system, help lowering those symptoms. So each one has things that you can do today to help manage your symptoms and to chart a long-term healing journey.
Okay. Wow. So those sound like some great tools. I probably could benefit from all 4 of them based on the diagnosis history that I have. But I appreciate you sharing that. I think it's always important to kind of, just put those sort of things out there, because you never know who may need those type of resources. But Jamie, I really appreciate your time today and your vulnerability. Again, I know it's hard sometimes for us to put ourselves out there in this way. So I definitely appreciate your willingness to come and hang with me for a bit and share your story. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Enjoyed it anytime.
Thank you. So guys, please make sure that you connect with Jamie. The information of how you can connect with him will be in the description of this episode. Also, be sure to follow me, Tree the LPC, on all social media platforms under the handle Tree the LPC. Until next time, be safe, be well, and make sure that you take care of your mental health.